shopping at this store. I'm robbing the store.
Iceland, the early 90s. A young boy by the name of Sindri Thor Stevenson was roaming the streets of Akureyri, a small town in northern Iceland, where the main way of making money is growing crops and trading. He was a bit of a naughty boy, committing his first breaking and entering in kindergarten, smashing a window at school and reaching inside to open the door. In that moment, he experienced the first adrenaline rush high, which he would spend the rest of his life chasing, and around the age of 6, he met his best friend and partner in crime, Hafthor Logi Hansen. In their first heist, they boldly went behind the counter at a shopping mall and they stole a purse from an old woman who was working there. Fast forward to 2008, Thor is now in his early 20s. The tranquility of the town was shattered as the devastating economic crisis swept through the country, impacting even this remote corner of the planet. Iceland was hit hard because of the main big banks that were involved in high-risk investments. Their foreign debt soared and people took their cash out of the banks fearing a total collapse. Countless businesses failed, people lost jobs, homes, and countless livelihoods got ruined. Thor understood how money works, how big corporations evade government regulations, and as he watched people's lives get ruined, he knew people of the upper echelon were benefiting and making profits. For those people, laws and ethics meant nothing. Thor understood that a regular job and a normal lifestyle will never get him to his goal, getting as rich as humanly possible, and as a result, his police record quickly filled up with more than 200 offenses. Breaking and entering, stealing, growing cannabis, and extracting lots of cash from slot machines. Thor was unstoppable. His partner and childhood friend Logi has grown into a muscular, tattoo-covered drug smuggler and money launderer known as Haffy the Pink. The two made an unstoppable force, marching towards fortune. Thor eventually got himself caught and was sentenced to 10 months for one of his offenses, and in jail he got a minute of clarity, so he decided to turn his life around. First he got clean off drugs, took a job driving a postal truck, got married, and graduated with a degree in computer science from the University of Iceland. Later he started a string of businesses, creating websites for car rental companies, selling protein pills online, but he was deep in debt and unable to support his 3 children. Thor soon found himself in the very same situation when he was an outlaw. All the cash he gets his hands on completely evaporates in the new economy like nothing. Thor looked around himself and remembered the years of drought that the bankers caused in 2008 and started thinking, what exactly happened after that? As for after any crisis, there is always the birth of new opportunity. Then it dawned on him. The answer was cryptocurrency. Iceland was rich in everything needed to mine bitcoins. There were plenty of empty warehouses to house computers at absurdly low rents. There was cheap geothermal energy literally rising from the earth to power them, and constant cold climate to keep the machines from overheating. And in a country with almost no crime, there was little need to spend money on extensive security measures. And that is why Iceland is home to some of the biggest crypto mining companies in the world. So Thor went online and started his research by asking in dedicated forums on how he could tap into this lucrative business. In the summer of 2017, while Thor was browsing these forums for information, he was contacted by a peculiar unknown individual, which he refers to as Mr. X, a mysterious and dangerous international investor.
Why go to all of the expenses and the effort to start your Bitcoin mine when you can get a head start into the business by stealing computers from the competition? I will give you 15% of the total value from as many Bitcoin computers as you could get.
Thor was really seduced by the potential $1.2 million estimated value every year by practically just sitting around and watching the machines print digital money forever. And as he said later on, Mr. X wasn't just a normal investor, he was someone you couldn't just say no to.
You got yourself a deal. Let's do it.
The first to be recruited, of course, is someone Thor knows very well, someone who can be trusted and has the guts for the job. Of course, it is the childhood friend, Harvey. Then the brawn, Matthias Jon Carlsen, a quiet husky guy who worked in a home for special needs kids, and his younger brother, Peter Stanislav, nicknamed the Polish. Next, Vector Jonasson, a good-looking guy with a degree as a systems administrator, and none of them had a significant police record. This small team of people was led by Thor's brains and Harvey's connection and resources. And funny enough, every single one of them happens to know each other. It is a small country. By July 2017, Thor had a Bitcoin wallet, burner phones, 10 tracker devices to attach to security vehicles, and rings of duct tape to silence any possible witnesses. He communicated with his team using Telegram, and they occasionally held face-to-face meetings. And soon, they all agreed on a single target, an old naval base that was turned into a Bitcoin mining farm. Thor began driving nearly 6 hours from his home in Akureyri to the old naval base outside Reykjavik to scout the premises. He easily spotted the guards sitting before giant split-screen security monitors watching over every inch of the facilities, inside and out, and others walking around, so the attack is temporarily on hold. On the night of December 5th, 2017, Thor and his crew broke into the Algrim Consulting data center at Asbro. They stole 104 Bitcoin computers along with power resources, graphic cards, and other supplies. And 5 days later, they struck again. The Borealis data center told the police that someone had tried to break into their facility at Asbro, attempting to disable the alarm by gluing the security censored, but failed. Both targeted companies chose to keep this private and quiet and avoided any leak to the press, as Iceland is one of the best destinations for Bitcoin miners and investors, and news like this is certainly bad for business. They preferred dealing with this as a business cost and moved on. At this point, the crew got a nice bounty, enough computers to start their own operation, but in this kind of business, size matters. They were hell-bent on getting more machines for more profits. Then, Thor received a phone call from an individual he had previously studied with in his university days. This acquaintance was currently employed as an electrician in the town of Borgarnes, in Iceland's western coastline. He had come across an unusual observation. The warehouse within the nearby data center was experiencing a sudden surge in its electricity demand, significantly higher than usual. He said that this surge of power consumption is attributed to something called Bitcoin, and to the group, this information was golden. So he quickly drove all the way from Akureyri and reached a small metal building in the middle of nowhere. The mining operation was only 6 days old. There wasn't much security at this point. They hadn't even set up the alarms yet. The only police officer who watched the place had gone home for the night. Surprisingly, a window high up was left open, letting the cold air cool down the super hot computers for free. Ironically, someone had even left a ladder nearby. Thor requested Carlson's help in acquiring a vehicle. The daycare worker successfully obtained a budget-friendly blue van, which he purchased from the Icelandic equivalent of eBay. Then Thor and Victor drove to the data center. Thor ascended the ladder and slipped through the open window and landed on the solid concrete floor. Then they quickly loaded 28 money-making machines into the van and swiftly drove away. And here they made a grave error. The two were really excited, so they didn't think clearly and chose the fastest road, the Whale Ford Tunnel, a 4-mile passage under the water. A camera at the toll booth took a picture of Thor driving the vehicle, and also caught a picture of Victor's tattoo. The following morning, a German investor of the mine logged in to check the data center's activity overnight. However, there was a complete absence of information, no data, no connection, and filled with anxiety, the investor urgently contacted the mine's owner and he said,
"Something's not right."
The owner, a 66-year-old entrepreneur, had been persuaded by her two computer geek sons to invest 50 grand in starting the mine.
"I am an old bitch.
She said in her strong Icelandic accent.
I never understood the Bitcoin. Never. I'm not going to pretend."
Now, together with her sons, they rushed to the mine, and when they opened the door, everything was gone. Nothing like this has ever happened in Iceland. The mine owner contacted the police, who examined the CCTV footage. It displayed the blue van Carlson had purchased, and after checking the license plates, the police arrested Thor, Victor, and Carlson. They took the suspect to their holding cells in their own hometowns for interrogation. The lead detective is a man by the name of Helgi Peter Ottensen. He was impressed with how nice the suspect seemed. He says,
"Victor was very polite, and Carlson was very clean and calm."
Under police questioning, Stevenson and Carlson completely denied any involvement in the burglary, and after 3 days of extensive discussions, they were permitted to leave, because the detective did not have any other incriminating evidence. Sure, they were caught taking the tunnel, but there was no direct evidence to tie them with the missing mining machines. But their release, of course, doesn't mean that they are completely off the police radar. However, the Bitcoin bros were not done here yet. And because of the Borgarnes investigation, Carlson lost his job as a daycare worker. Apparently, getting investigated in Iceland is a really big deal. Burdened by substantial debts and his upcoming child, he directed his anger and frustration towards Thor. In response, he said he would involve him in another burglary. Thor now was learning and evolving as they went on with their operations, and understood that the most important element of this whole business is information. As the electrician friend tip was highly fruitful, he realized that instead of heavy long planning, he should seek insider information instead to minimize the risks. One night in late 2017, a man named Ivar received a strange phone call.
"Are you a security guard at the Advania data center?" Yes, I am."
Then the caller abruptly hung up. Of course, that was the gang, and their goal now is to get this guy to be the key to the data center. The man with the resources was heavy, so he did his due diligence and found out that this security guard Ivar had an ex-girlfriend, and one of his relatives owed him some money. So the deal he was offered was, get the security guard to talk to us, and the interest on your debt will be forgiven. So the relative went to his house and tried seducing him with some money, which he declined. So he escorted him to a black Mazda parked outside, and inside, Thor and a couple of other men were waiting for him, and they offered him a much different deal, a deal he cannot refuse. The security guard shared all he knew about the Advania data center with the gang, where the security cameras were, how the anti-theft system worked, and how security shifts were set up. He also gave the thieves guard uniforms and the code to turn off the alarm. On January 16th, the team got to work, everything going smoothly, no guards patrolling the area, no security alarms were triggered, and the operation was unfolding like clockwork. They got in, snatched 225 Bitcoin computers, loaded them in the car, and disappeared as quick as they came in. Helgi Kjartansson, one of the country's best police chiefs, finds himself in a sticky situation with lots of complaints, missing expensive gear, and investors' pressure for secrecy and solutions. His biggest issue was he couldn't follow the money, and he couldn't follow the machines themselves to know if they were running or not. So instead of tech-advanced route, he diverted towards a more traditional approach, using telephone data, rental car records, bank accounts, and wiretaps. And suddenly they have a connection. Their lead was a security guard that was blackmailed for information. And just 2 weeks after the robbery, the domino pieces started to fall. The security guard was taken into custody at his house and admitted his involvement. He informed the police about Thor and the 2 other individuals who threatened him, and on the same day, Carlson and his brother were arrested. Thor, who had sold his home and was getting ready to move to Spain with his family, was also caught as well, as he was preparing to escape. Among his belongings, they found a roughly drawn map of the Advania data center in his pocket, and his iPhone was taken by the police to be unlocked and examined. Additionally, rental car records showed that he had rented the second car used in the Advania theft. Thor was thrown into solitary confinement for a whole month and pressured repeatedly by police to give up the location of the computers, which he refused to do so. Police from all over Iceland worked hard to find the stolen computers. They searched the whole island using cars, boats, and helicopters. They raided places they thought the thieves might be. They also went to buildings that were using a lot of electricity, thinking it might be for the computers, but sometimes it was just for growing pot. The police knocked on many doors and broke them too, but ended up with absolutely nothing, and Thor continued denying his involvement with everything. But surprisingly, while he kept instructing his crew to delete everything from their phones, he hadn't deleted a single thing. Messages, pictures, audio recordings, all the evidence police would need was just laying there for the taking. You might be thinking that the story pretty much ends here. Enough evidence was obtained and people got caught. This brings the story to an end, but that couldn't be further from the truth. At this point, everyone knows who Thor is, as advertised to be the mastermind behind a $2 million heist in one of the safest islands in the world. He made it to the headlines, but he will soon get there again, as in Iceland, it's not considered a crime to plan a prison escape. The law recognizes that prisoners, like all people, have a natural right to freedom and can't be punished for trying to get it. Thor was in custody and spent 3 months in open prison, where inmates have their own rooms with TVs and cell phone access. On April 16th, there was a hearing to decide if he should be kept in custody for 10 more days before his trial. But the judge wanted more time to think and postponed the decision until the next day, but didn't extend the custody. The prison staff told Thor that technically he was free because the custody order had expired at 4 p.m. and wouldn't be renewed until the next day. He signed a paper saying he would spend the night in a cell waiting for the judge's decision. Then he escaped through his room's window, got a ride for 65 miles to the airport, and flew to Stockholm using a friend's name. He didn't need an ID or talk to anyone since Sweden doesn't require Icelandic travelers to have passports. Ironically, Thor finds himself a few seats behind Katrin, the Prime Minister of Iceland. All he had to do was keep his head low and be quiet, as he is a celebrity in Iceland right now, and by the time the security alarm went off in prison, he was already in Sweden. The police, with the help of Interpol, launched an international search. However, Thor managed to stay ahead. He went from Sweden to Denmark, then by train to Germany, and finally by car to Amsterdam. While on the run, he wrote a letter to the press where he claimed that the police were violating human rights during his interrogation, and the people in Iceland began supporting the Bitcoin thieves crew, seeing them as folk heroes. But once again, he will make a grave mistake. In Amsterdam, he met up with Vector and Javi. The trio posed for a picture in front of a department store. Javi posted the image on Instagram, and naturally, the police force would be watching. 2 hours later, Thor was arrested by the Amsterdam police. He spent the next 19 days in a Dutch prison before being extradited to Iceland to stand trial. On December 5, 2018, just around Christmas, the prison sentences got handed. Thor was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Carlson confessed to the Advania heist and was sentenced to 2.5 years. His brother, Peter, received 18 months. Javi, Victor, and the security guard got sentences ranging from 15 to 20 months. They also had to repay the police 116 grand in US dollars for the legal cost of the investigation. While Mr. X remains unknown. Does he actually exist or not? No one knows, and the 550 Bitcoin computers remain missing to this day. Let's end this with Thor's own words. Maybe the computers have been running the whole time. Maybe I know where they are, and maybe I don't. Well, to me it seems like maybe he achieved his goal of being as rich as possible, and maybe he didn't. Either way, no one will ever find out. Thank you for watching, and check my channel for more stories.